Welcome back, everybody. Happy Friday. Beautiful day here in North Dakota. Actually got the shop door open and everything. What am I working on today? I'm removing uh, manifold studs. First I took a tap, chased them, cleaned up all the threads, any rust and boogers that are on them. And I'm taking a couple of nuts, tightening them on there so I can remove the stud without damaging it. And so I could make sure all this surface is, run a flat file over it, make sure all the head surfaces are good and clean and flat, no burrs on them. And then I can, when I put these studs back in for good, I can seal them up, because a lot of these are just blind holes, right? They don't go anywhere. But some of these actually go into the water jacket. That one does. And this one does. So some of these need to make sure you have thread sealant on the studs, otherwise they'll potentially weep antifreeze, and I don't want that. So I'm working on that because, well, I got sidetracked working on it because hardware came today. I got the brass nuts for the manifold. They came. I got the rivet for the knob for the toolbox door. I got the bolt for the toolbox door hinge. I got some nuts, heavy hex nuts for the steering box. Probably get to that later today. And some, these are the head nuts for the head. Toolbox door. Lauren's got me some material to make that up. So we may start working on that here one of these days, make up a form and try forming up a door. I got a whole bunch of good news. I made some calls this morning and was talking with some people. Midwest cylinder head is done with my front casting for the engine. So they got that crated back up, and that's on its way. I should see that here like Monday or Tuesday. So that'll be great. You guys will probably see that next weekend then. Sounds like from talking with Tim there that there was a lot more cracks in that than I realized. So it was a good thing that I did send it down there. We'll show you more of that once it gets back, of course. I heard back from Hermantown Radiator. Glenn's got my radiator all done, and my folks actually picked that up here this afternoon. So at the very least, hopefully I'll be able to maybe put up a picture or two of that here. And then next time Dad swings out and visits, he'll bring that out with him. Hopefully in the next, say, month or so, he'll have a chance to get out this way. He's working on, Dad is also working on making that adapter flange for the top of the exhaust manifold. And we're working on figuring out the length of the exhaust pipe. And it sounds like Dad rounded up a elbow for the top. We just need to confirm what length we want to make that exhaust pipe, and then he can basically get all that ready and then bring that out with him too. Because then once I get this final cleaned up again, I'll probably run it through the sandblaster again to clean up a little bit of surface rust that's on it. It had been cleaned up once in the past. Previous owner must have cleaned it up, but it's got surface rust on it again. But once I get that cleaned up, basically all the exhaust stuff can get high temperature heat paint put on it. And that actually, that chunk of the engine would be done. So we'll probably work on that. I did mail down those clutch parts, those worn ears, and the throw-out fork that was on here. I sent them down to Midwest Cylinder Head today. So they'll hopefully, next month or so get that done and sent back. Because I picked Tim's brain on that at Midwest Cylinder Head, and he sounded like they could tackle that without much issue. And I just assume send it to somebody that knows what they're doing, because when it comes to welding, that's just not my expertise, and I don't want to wreck these irreplaceable parts. So hopefully they can get that fixed up in a pretty decent time frame and get that back out. I also heard from Kyle here today that he's working on these, final drive pinion parts. He's got the pinions themselves done, and then they're working on the little bushings to go over them. So those should be done pretty soon. That's more excellent news. Things are starting to come together here. So yeah, I guess I will check back with you guys a little bit later once I get into this project a little bit more. Okay, studs are all removed. All the stud holes have been tapped. Ran a flat file across all the manifold surfaces. The manifold fits up against there, very nice, no rocky or nothing. So that'll be good. I think I'll do a little bit of final cleanup on the block here while it's easy to access with no studs and stuff. And then get some sealant and put all these studs back in. It is good. I'm going to seal all of them because you got to be careful, because even some of these that, okay, they're blind hole, right? Well, they're actually, like that one, it actually does cut into the water jacket just a little bit. So you can't just assume that because it isn't an obvious through hole that it isn't, sealed off. Some of them do actually go into the water jacket, so I'm going to seal all of them. There. All the manifold studs are in and sealed with a little bit of black Permatex. So those should be good. The manifold dry fitted with all the nuts. I adjusted a couple of the holes on the ears of the manifolds ever so slightly with the die grinder to allow the manifold to go back just a fuzz to let this nut go on, because as it was a little bit too far forward for that nut to go on. It's really close there. So I adjusted a couple of the holes just a little bit, like I said, and it allowed it to go back just enough. So that's good. That part of the project is done. Let's move on. Why, yes, we do actually make custom bent bolts around here. So the original one was bent. So I made bent, new one, bent to match, because that's how the head fits in this odd casting. It has to be a little tweaked. Straight one doesn't fit very well. So okay, moving on to the next thing. So I'm working on the steering box hardware here, making things a little bit more correct. So I changed these around, put some heavy hex head nuts on. I got the bolts to the right length, cleaned off the factory marks on the square headed bolts. I got one more to do here, but I got to take the steering box off the tractor to get to that one. So I'll do that tomorrow maybe. It's about supper time now, so I'm going to call it a day. Hope to see you guys in the morning. Okay, let's recap what I got done today so far. I took the steering box off. I switched this bolt around, put the right nut on, put it back, put all the linkages back. So until we get some heavy hex head bolts made up for there and there, that box is done for now. Oh, and the mounting bolts need to be heavy hex heads. Then I've been working on engine stuff. I started out by running tap through all the threaded holes. All these for the front cover. I took out all these plugs and cleaned out all those threads. These are where the mag bracket mounts. Those will get replaced with bolts. These two are just plugs. I'm not sure. There must have been some other variation of things, mounting brackets for different applications. But in an Allis world, these two are not used. So I cleaned them out and I sealed them up with some black Permatex. These are access plugs for the oil galleys. Same story, those have been cleaned and sealed, so hopefully no oil leaks through them. This one was actually stuck. I didn't remove that one. I couldn't get it out, so I just left well enough alone and figure if it's stuck, it shouldn't leak. I cleaned up the baffle mostly, and I cleaned up the oil pan. Besides a good final wipe down, these should be ready to go. I removed the 2 studs for the oil pickup, chased those threads. I'll have to get in one new stud. One of the threads is a little bit goobered, so probably get a new one for there. I guess one of the next steps is going to be fitting that baffle into this pan, because if you remember, I'm using the baffle from the power unit engine. This is the baffle that originally was in this oil pan, the Allis pan, but it is considerably more rusty, so I'm not going to use that one. The other one is in much better shape. So that'll be one of the next steps, to work on that and get that riveted back into the pan. Because then basically once that front cover gets here this next week, I can start fitting all this stuff together for good. That'll be good. Now, a little sidetrack. This oil splash shield. So if you're a long-time viewer, you remember these 2 parts that I didn't know what they went to. Well, that's what they're for. So that's even further proof that this tractor came with 2 engines worth of stuff, which I guess we already knew, but so another mystery solved what those are for, I guess, because there is no actual oil seal on the back. It's just this oil baffle. Your oil pan kind of prevents a lot of the splashing from going back there, and then it's just a very snug fit between the crankshaft and this rear plate. There's only 1 wrap of electrical tape's worth of clearance there, so it's a pretty snug clearance. Let's talk briefly about the oil system on a Leroy engine, at least as I understand it at this point. So, in a nutshell, it is a combination of oil pump and splash system. The connecting rod are oiled by splash. They got these little dippers that dip into these troughs in into this baffle on the bottom of the oil pan. So and there's a hole there, and so that's how they are lubricated. The wrist pins are just lubricated from the oil splashing around as well. There's no actual forced tube up into the wrist pin or anything like that. So how the pump side of things work is you got your oil pump here. That has a tube that goes into the oil pickup, which will be in the bottom of the pan, which we haven't gotten to that yet. Here we will in the coming weeks. But just for now, know that the oil gets sucked up from there through a tube up into this pump. The pump is pumping from, let's see, put a light in here. Does that make it better or worse? It is pumping. Let's see if I can position this light here. Well prepared video as usual. So as the cam rotates, it is moving that plunger back and forth, making the oil pump. It is going up through, back into the block, there's a tube that goes along here. So that's your pressurized tube. That's going into this center cam bearing. It goes back to the back cam bearing. It also has a galley that from that plug there, which, from machining purposes, it goes down and then down again. And that's how the rear main journal is lubricated. Going farther, there's another tube that lubes the front cam bearing, and there again through a series of passages it goes down and down to lube the front main journal. So that takes care of all of the, this part of the block. And then when it's splashing, there is little reservoirs cast into the block here, little square reservoir. So as the oil is splashing around, it splashes up and collects in the reservoir there, and then there's one on this end as well. Up in here there's a little pocket in the casting, and then it's drilled with these little bushings from that pocket, and they come down, and those fit into this tube when the baffle is in place, and so the oil drips down through into this tube, and then there's a series of holes in line with each little dipper reservoir, so the oil dribbles down and fills them up, so the dipper has continual new oil to lubricate the connecting rod journals. So hopefully that makes some sense as far as how the oil lubrication works. I'm not sure what I'll do here. Probably wrap it up here pretty soon. It's starting to get close to supper time. Like I said, I'll probably keep focusing on doing some final wipe down and cleaning of the baffle and the oil pan, and start figuring out some locations of rivets, because of course the hole pattern is different. Let's see here, is this even right? That goes on, it actually goes this way, I guess, like that. Of course the rivet holes are different between this baffle and this baffle, so I'll have to figure out exactly where this needs to be located in the pan, and then drill new holes into the baffle so we can do our riveting. So yeah, that's where we're at as of now. I'll probably check back with you guys tomorrow. Honk honk. Geese are back. So I've been doing some fitting on the pan to the baffle. Fitting pretty good here. Had to do a little tweaking, had to do a little bit of grinding. The casting has some boogers, so I got rid of them, and then the baffle was fitting in there much nicer now. And I'm looking, and these holes actually might line up. I thought that they were completely different, but they're actually looking pretty close. So I think what I'll do is I'll put some little bolts in there for now to temporarily hold it in place. Put the pan onto the block, see if all these seem to be lining up, and make sure there's clearance for those dippers and everything. And yeah, if everything looks good there, we might be lucky and not have to drill different holes. So that would be pretty cool. I'm impressed. All the holes actually lined up. I bet you what I did before when I thought they didn't line up is I bet you I had it in there the wrong way. So got them all temporarily bolted in there, so we'll see if it lines up now. Okay, so far so good. Got her temporarily bolted off on the four corners. Rotated it over a few times. I don't hear any of the dippers scraping on the baffle, so there must be clearance there. The only little bit of an issue, I'm sure you probably can't see it on camera, well, maybe if you look in there, is the end of that tube, I believe, is bottoming out on that pipe nipple in the block before the pan is touching the block. You can see a little gap there. But depending on what thickness of gasket I end up going with there, that won't be an issue. And even if I do need to be closer, I can either take a little bit off those pipe nipples or bend that oil tube down just a little bit or whatever. So that's pretty minor. I'm just happy that all my baffle holes are lined up, so I don't have to do any re-engineering there. We can just rivet it. So that's good. Okay, so here's probably one of our next projects then. So this is the oil pickup. This goes in the oil pan here, like so. And so the oil gets sucked up through here, up through this pipe, which goes up into your oil pump. So it's also your engine oil level gauge. I haven't even cracked this open to see what's in there, but I believe it's just as simple as a float. So if this is up, you know you have engine oil at the appropriate level. If it is down, you know your oil level is down and you need to add oil to your engine. So we'll have to take this apart and see what's inside of there. Looks like we have a potentially good stud here, so I might not actually even have to order one. We can get that out without wrecking it. We're going to have to probably practice up on our soldering skills because the screen on this intake is all broken. So I'll probably have to get up order up some new screen. I might actually have some from a different project. Get some screen and practice our soldering skills. Take this all apart, clean it. Little difference in the oil lines. So this is the one that came with the power unit engine. This is the one that was on. Well, I assume it's from a tractor. I guess I don't know 100%. I don't know. I don't think, to my knowledge, I think the oil level and gauges and stuff were different on a power unit, but I'll have to look into that a little bit. But anyway, point is that the oil line is a little bit different. It went straight up into the old oil pump, whereas this one, 90s, you know, I guess it doesn't really make a difference, just a little bit different is all. I guess if for whatever reason I wanted to use a straight pipe, all I'd have to do is change this fitting here, and that would be very much doable. I'll have to see which one of these the profile fits better, if it makes any difference or not. And I think the only reason that Ziggle is in there is to a little more clearance around this flange of the pan here, I think. So yeah, that'll probably be one of our next projects. Maybe tomorrow we'll crack into that, because I don't really want to commit to riveting this quite yet. I want to make sure everything with that front cover fits. So if we have to do any modifications as far as fitting this casting and, you know, sanding it or whatever, I want to do that all before this is committed in here, so that way I can clean it all out really good is the biggest thing. I want to make sure everything is fit, give it a good cleaning, and then basically the riveting will be the last thing before we put it on the block for good. So that way I know everything is clean inside and out. So yeah, that's where we're at now. Probably check back with you guys tomorrow. Okay, happy Sunday. So I've been working on this float gauge a little bit again. Couple more observations, comments. I had somebody ask me what type of material this little white ball is made out of. And I'm not even sure exactly what it is. It's like a glass or a porcelain, best I can tell. Like they melted a little glob of whatever it is on. They probably put like a little bend on the end of the wire, I'm guessing, and then put this little glob of, like I said, glass or porcelain. So I suppose a guy could reproduce that by putting like a glob of, forming a little glob of like JB Weld or something and painting it white, or super gluing find like a little glass bead and super glue on there or something if yours is broken off. I think I'll probably leave this cork alone. I did carefully so the wire just loops back around and pokes back into the cork. I carefully removed it and stuck it in a fresh spot in the cork. And when that's been done once before, you can see the original hole on the right side there, and where it was on the bottom, I turned it around. Seems to be stuck on there pretty good. I'll probably stick it in a little jar of oil and make sure it floats and everything. But I think it should probably be okay. It's not disintegrating or anything. I kind of carefully cleaned off the little loose bits of stuff on the outside of it. So I was looking at my stuff, and I do have some of the right size brass screen to fix this one if I need to. But I also got to thinking, Norm still has some of the parts for this engine down at his place that we forgot to gather when I was there picking up the engine. And I know there was a float level on that engine, so there's a chance that that pickup screen and float and stuff might be good on that engine, so I can use that instead of having to remake. But maybe if I get a chance tonight, I'll call up Norm and see if he's gotten a chance to look at all that stuff yet, round it up. I also got to thinking, I misspoke there yesterday as far as saying that this was the original Allis Chalmers float. It probably was not, because it had that stud in there, and both of the studs were in the original pan. So obviously this one was not on this pan. This must have been from one of the power unit engines. But I looked through some of my literature last night, and there again, I think I was wrong. It looks like the power unit engines did indeed have the same type of a float on them. So they're probably all the same as far as that goes. There are differences between the two styles of pipe, like I pointed out there yesterday, the 90-degree fitting versus the straight fitting. But from what I can see at this point, there doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to that as far as what had what. If it was tractor versus power engine, it was probably just a supply thing. Whatever Leroy had as far as fittings or whatever, they probably used. So I don't think either one is necessarily correct or incorrect. In fact, one of the books I was looking through, it showed like an old ad for an Allis Chalmers 612 stuff, and in one part of the ad you could clearly see a 90-degree fitting. In another part of that same ad, a different picture of the engine, it looked like a straight fitting. So I think either one of those is perfectly acceptable. So yeah, I think I'm going to continue working on cleaning up this housing and this here, and dig out my gaskets, because I'm pretty sure I got a gasket for this and probably this that came with the tractor. Because basically once I get this cleaned up, there's really no reason. It pretty much can't be ready to put back on the tractor. This is kind of one of those little bit simple projects. So I'll check back with you guys a little bit later. So we'll do a little experiment. Got a little bit of oil. We'll let it soak and see if it keeps floating. So far it is. Floats in the oil. push it down and it comes back up. We'll give her a while and see. So I got all these threads chased. I was looking at gaskets a little bit, the stuff that came with the tractor. Looks like this one will probably work. This top one's not very close. I'll probably end up making that one over again. Norm already had the oil pump one on. We don't need that. This is for the governor. That's looking like it should be pretty close to working. One of these days we got to get back to that project too. This is for the back of the engine. And that's going to be different because it's Allis pan. I mean, this in itself would actually be right because mine's a power unit engine, but if it was an Allis block it would not be correct. So that one goes between there and there, because if it was an Allis block it'd be bigger. And I still got to think about if I'm going to do something about that too, make a piece to fill in there, make it look more cosmetically correct. This is for the front cover, and that's not right because it's for a power unit engine. These are for the valve side covers, and Norm already had them done. This is for the exhaust manifold. That one should work. All these other exhaust manifold ones, looks like they should work. So that's good. These oil pan ones are not even close. I don't know what the deal is there. The whole pattern is, you start it lined up in the back and it's way off by the time you get to the front. They've actually, they've expanded, which is odd because normally gaskets shrink over time. This one's the same way. You start with it lined up there and it's not even close by the time you get to the front. So I'll end up just making some new ones there anyway. Which, I might have anyway, depending on what size, or thickness rather, material I end up wanting to have to line up everything. So some gaskets will work, some won't. So yeah, that's where I'm at now. I think I'm going to call her a day, call her a week. Go put together a little video for you guys for this week's progress, and I hope to see you all next week. Thanks for watching.